This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
All right, let's do it.
Oh, boy, that was a long walk. But hang on, let me just unlock this. And welcome to the Vivisection Room. Boy, does this room bring back memories.
That is just creepy, man. It's too Dexter.
Oh. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to be creepy. It's been a while since we took apart a game on the show. I kind of I really miss it.
Creepy isn't bad, but so what do I do with all this?
Oh, right, the DCC book. Yeah. Put it up on the table. I'll get out the plastic sheets and all the instruments.
So we're just going to keep doing the Dexter stuff?
Yeah, seriously, Phil. It kind of lacks consent.
Yeah, kind of does. Okay, let's try it again. But here, let's try this. All right, here we are. It's the science lab. And boy, does it bring back memories.
Science lab? Is this a tricorder?
It sure is. Computer, activate room sensors.
And the DCC book?
Yep, just put that on the table. Computer, start a level 4 diagnostic scan. Friends, take your tricorders and start collecting your readings.
I can get with this.
Much better.
Co-host's log. Stardate irrelevant. These are the voyages of the Misdirected Mark podcast. Tonight, we're going to take a deep dive on Dungeon Crawl Classics, looking at what makes this game tick as well as our own feelings about the game. Then we're going to head over to the conversation corner, but first, my name is Phil.
My name is Jerry.
And I'm Old Man Logan.
Hoo-hoo.
Do.
All righty. Quick check. Everybody doing okay pandemic-wise?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hanging in there.
Okay. I mean, we, for our international listeners, we here in Western New York are actually faring pretty well right now. Our numbers are way down. The state of New York's numbers are way down. And we're doing all right.
Yeah.
I can't say that for the rest of the country.
There are several states that are just not there.
In fact, New York State has listed, I think, a dozen states right now that if you travel to and come back to New York State, you now have to quarantine for 14 days.
Yep.
Yeah, I've got kind of a problem with that. Not because I think people should be in quarantine, but what do you do if one of your employees decides to go on vacation to one of those places, then comes back and wants to suddenly get a free paid 2-week vacation?
They don't get a free paid 2-week vacation. They get quarantined for 2 weeks.
Yeah, and in New York State, that means, anyway, that's just something I've got an issue with.
Well, we can talk about that in the after show because let me tell you, as a state employee, it's even worse for me.
Really?
We'll talk about it in the after show.
Yeah, there's a lot of rules. So
it's worse for me. There are consequences if I go into one of those states for non-essential.
I think it's a good idea. I will just say I think it's a good idea. I think the quarantine is a good idea for people to come out of state. Just it's got some problems, but I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. So all in all, I'm fine. I'm still working from home, which is fine, and my mental health is better, which I'll talk about in the conversation corner. So yeah. And Bob, you're good?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's been pretty steady. So. In the 2 weeks since we last had a show, I don't think anything really stands out to me as being negatively affecting me any more than the general situation.
Good. All right. Well, let's jump right into one thing. So, Bob, why don't you just pick up where you left off? I see actually something really cool on your one thing this week.
Yeah, I decided at the beginning of last week that I was going to take some vacation time. I said, you know what, I'm just going to take some time off. Looking at this current week coming up and seeing that it was the 4th of July week, I said, you know what, I'm going to get Friday off anyway. I had to work Monday because I had to attend a meeting in the afternoon. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to just check with my boss, see if everything's okay. And if there's no argument, I'm going to take Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, have Friday off for the holiday, and then just bring it back around to the Monday again. So I took the time and looking forward to just getting some stuff done and relaxing without having to check in with work and and that kind of thing. So
I've seen a couple memes where people are like, "Oh, it's vacation time," and they just like get up from their computer and just move to their couch.
yeah.
Like there it is. That's the whole vacation.
Yeah, pretty much.
How about you, Jared? What have you been up to?
Mostly just playing some games, doing a little bit of game writing, kind of delving back into a few things that I started years ago. Kind of poking at a few things. I pulled out a couple of things I did for a different publisher that we never got done. I'm just kind of re-editing some of them. It's going to take a long time, but it's just fun to get that. And also writing some stuff for when we open up to face-to-face games again, and we start doing Savage Sundays. A lot of the little one-shot games I've got, I'm trying to convert to Savage Worlds. So I've had a lot of fun just playing around with ideas and rules and things like that.
Cool.
Savage Worlds is easy to write for.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it a bad game, it's just easy to write for. So,
yeah, no doubt.
Yep.
I myself am the reason we weren't on the air last week because of my big-ass project that has been going on. So I worked 60 hours last week with 1 day off. And I am going to work a bunch more hours this week. And then I'm going to probably try not to work next week. I think I'm going to just, I'm getting to the point where I've just about had it with work. Like, I don't want to talk to, like, I send out all the proper communications for my projects, and I'm talking to my project team all day. And I have no problem with my project team, but like, I don't want to talk to management right now. Right?
Yeah.
Like I'm sending my reports up chain and posting my status reports, and then they're like talking to me, and I'm like, stop talking to me. Like,
yeah,
I just want this project to be done. Like,
they have earned your ire.
I've reached the point in my project where like I despise this project and I want it to be over, which has nothing to do with either the work nor the people. The work that we're doing is really cool, and the people who are working on it are great. But I'm just at the point where like I no longer want this living in my head.
Yeah.
I've come to learn that the thing about my project management, especially my project management style, is that essentially I just use my anxiety about getting things done as the way to like plan projects. Like it's the way I motivate myself, or the mindset I go into when I think about projects is kind of from this anxiety mitigation point. So there becomes a point when I am done holding on to a project and being anxious about it, and I'm like totally in there. Like I want this thing done, man. And then I need a couple days to just disappear. Like, don't call me, don't talk to me. I'll come back in 3 or 4 days and, start over. Like I'll start over and I'll get a new project, but it's been like over a year and the deployment's been really tough. We had a number of setbacks due to launching it at a time when I did not recommend we should launch it, but the bosses overrode me on that. And so you dance with the girl you brought, or to more modernize that phrase, you dance with the person you brought, and you just you gotta get through it. So that's where I am. I'm in the get through it phase, and I want it out of my psyche. Be gone. Anyway, cool. And I just roll us right over to announcements.
Yeah.
Star Trek Watch Club continues. We are moving from season 4 into season 5 in the next week. That's exciting. Season 4 was pretty excellent. Season 5 only gets better. So we're doing another double feature watch party tonight. So for the live people, we're doing a watch party tonight with 2 disjointed episodes. We're doing 2 separate episodes. Really, the draw for tonight is the second episode, which is Cupid.
Yeah, baby.
Yes, Bob remembers.
Yep.
The one before it is important because, again, one of our goals for this watch club was to also be able to watch DS9. So the episode that precedes Cupid in our watch party tonight will help build upon that. Also, I should also say, if you want to jump in and join us for the remainder of the club, which is going to go through the rest of July into the beginning of August, you can just go to the forums, go all the way to the bottom of the forums for the miscellaneous stuff. You'll find it in there. It's the most active topic currently in the bottom of the forums. And I post a watch list each week. I note which ones we're going to do watch parties for and when. And the links for the watch party and everything are in there, plus a rolling discussion of all of our of the episodes. Rob's been in there, Jerry's been in there talking about a PK Sullivan, myself. Like usually people post a few comments about the episodes. I try to go in and just say why I picked it, like why this one's in the collection. Now, I'm also gearing us up for the DS9 Watch Club. So I have started work on the DS9 list. It is twice the size of the next gen list. It is
surprise, yeah.
It is almost too hard to winnow down. Even in season 1, if I had to get really pragmatic, there are a few I could probably drop, but like I found one today. And I'm not a huge fan of season 1 Deep Space Nine, but I found one today where I discovered it's the origin of Cisco's baseball.
Oh,
and I'm like,
that's a nice little nugget.
Yeah, like and by the time you get to the end of the show, that's not a small detail in the show. And I'm like,
yeah,
oh, I kind of feel like we need to have this episode in the collection. So the list may start big, and I may get a little more pragmatic and cut some episodes out and put them in the recommend list.
Yeah.
But I feel like that one is not one I can drop. Yeah. Like,
I'm going to make a statement now that's probably going to get me yelled at because I seem to miss things in your watch list post every time.
Sure.
But I want to say this particular time it wasn't clear which episodes we were doing the watch party on, unless it's like always the first 2 on the list, or like I don't remember them being specifically called out in this post. But again, I've missed something in every post so far that you've had to yell at me about. So
look, I'm gonna go peek, but I'm pretty sure the graphic actually says watch party on it.
I mean, it certainly says watch party. I just don't remember if it actually says which episodes.
It's possible. Yeah. I didn't for week 5, but I'm just gonna look. No, week 5. No, there's a column that says watch party on the graphic.
Right, okay. But it says what date and time. Does it say the episode?
There's a table that has the episode and then the watch party.
Oh, okay.
It's a table.
So that wasn't clear.
Read it like a row. Because it has the watch party 2 times, one for each. Okay. We'll go over it later.
No problem.
Anyway, we're still working away on it. I'm having a lot of fun doing it. I will say this, in 2 weeks from now, and I will announce this in the forums, there is going to be an off night watch party. We get to a point where there are so many good episodes packed together that we're going to do the watch party for 2 episodes, but then The Inner Light, which may be one of the best Star Trek episodes ever, would have just been in the middle of the list, and that is unacceptable. So I will be hosting a watch party that week for just The Inner Light.
Cool.
Okay, so that's it for Star Trek Watch Club, which also hints at there will be a DS9 Watch Club coming in the either in August or September, depending on whether we take a break or not. Next, I just want to bring up a slightly sad note. This came out on Sunday, I believe.
Yeah.
Game illustrator Jim Holloway passed away. For us old timers, Jim Holloway was a pretty prolific RPG artist, having done work for a whole host of publications, including D&D. But I always. Oh, he did D&D. He also did some Star Frontiers and a few others. But I will always remember Jim Holloway as the artist for Paranoia.
Yeah.
So he did most of the artwork for the early editions of Paranoia. I think it is absolutely iconic.
Yeah.
I think that no one. I don't think Paranoia would have. I don't think Paranoia would have been as awesome as it was without Holloway's interior and covers. I think, and in fact, it's actually my biggest gripe about the newest edition of Paranoia is that it has none of the Holloway art. Like they went and got other artists, and I'm like, well, how do I say this? This is all crap. Like the rules are great. The idea is, the game is good. You are missing Holloway's art. You have you have fallen short of the mark. They could have just
I'm sure
recycled.
the art is perfectly fine, but
it's fine. It's just not Jim Holloway.
Yeah, and like Phil said, us old timers, that Holloway art is embedded in our brains for Paranoia, and it was just so good.
If you want to see a lot of really good Holloway fantasy designs, the Dungeons and Dragons basic edition, Shady Dragon Inn, which gave, it was basically just a compendium of 20 each of the 7 basic character classes. He did all the artwork for the 7 character classes. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that Holloway was really big on back in the 80s was that he was not very often a cheesecake artist. Most of his female characters had realistic armor, realistic weapons, realistic poses. He very rarely did anything that was chainmail bikini style, unless it was meant to be a parody of the whole concept. Where you'd have like 2 succubi that were actually dancing girls trying to seduce the stupid fighter kind of thing. But when you saw some of his, especially some of his Dragon magazine covers, probably my favorite artwork from him is a female ranger up in a tree.
Oh, I know the cover.
With 3 orcs walking through the swamp. And I looked at that and I was like, that's how I was young, but I looked at that and my thought was, that's what I want my character to look like. I was starting to play non-male characters, and I was like, that looks like a character I would play. And he was really good at that. And it dawned on me as I started looking at other artists of the time, how much of his stuff had characters that were not designed to be sexy or adventurous, or he did a lot of male and female characters that were goofy, that had weird situations.
I saw a really good, I forget who tweeted it, but somebody said one of Holloway's specialties was that a lot of his characters looked like how we play characters. Like they were clueless and frightened and like utterly terrified at the things that were happening to them. Which is also why his Paranoia stuff was amazing, right? Like he captured the folly of being in Alpha Complex, right? Like the dark, deadly folly of living in that place so well. Anyway, yes. So rest in peace, Jim Holloway.
Yep.
I was as a final note, I was a little sad to that I couldn't easily find an artist site where I could buy prints. I've always wanted some Jim Holloway prints, and I was like, oh, I will go buy some now, to help support the estate, but there isn't really a site.
I found a couple of limited choices on eBay, and really there isn't anything out there, which is unfortunate because I know there's a lot of people that probably would want to.
I'm part of his Facebook page, and that's what they've talked about quite a bit, was that he was never really big on selling a lot of that kind of stuff. He never did a lot of it he sold to like TSR, and so the TSR people have it. Because he was just so prolific with his artwork. There was so much of it, he was putting out things all the time.
So anyway, that's a good segue to get into our in-depth tonight, because Jim
actually
I
wanted to just throw one more quick one quick third announcement.
Sure.
Our friends at Gaming and BS just did their 300th episode. So
Oh,
big
nice.
props and kudos to the Gaming
Yeah.
BS folks, Brett and Sean. Congratulations.
That's what the
on
BS stands
300.
for,
That's
Bob.
what the BS stands for, Brett and Sean. So congrats, and here's the 300 more, right?
Yeah, 300. Congratulations,
Nice
guys.
work. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I don't think we have any specific intro music, so Bob, hit us with something to transition.
Yeah, we'll get a little transition thing here. There you go.
Awesome. Okay, welcome to the deep dive. This is a room that we don't use very often, where we just dive into one single game, and sometimes we do it in conjunction with the game room. Like sometimes in the past we would talk about a game and then we'd like pull it aside and do this deep dive. But tonight we're going to do a deep dive on a game that all three of us have been. We've been actually playing it for a while, on and off, which is Dungeon Crawl Classics. And the way we're going to do the deep dive is we're going to start with an overview of the game to kind of let people know what it's about, because I think people know some of it, but probably not all of it. We'll talk about our own personal play experiences, so just our feelings about playing the game. Then we'll dive in a little deeper on things we actually really like about the game, then things that we don't like about the game, and then a couple of strategies or play styles. So just some tips, like if you're going to get into this game, here's our advice on how to get into it easier. And then we'll just kind of wrap it all up and put a bow on it at the end. And then we'll head over to the conversation corner. So let me get us started with the overview of the game. So this will be very non-editorial, very fact-based. So Dungeon Crawl Classics, otherwise known as DCC, is a D20 fantasy RPG created by Goodman Games. It works to capture the old school experience of fantasy RPGs. So you just take a moment there and note, because of that, it is a classic fantasy game. It comes with all the baggage that a classic fantasy game comes with. So just going to put that out there. It is exactly what it is. All right, Jer, tell me about this bad boy physically.
Well, it is a weighty tome. Comes in at 476 pages. Suitable for deflecting weapons and so on if they're thrown at you, or dice. But it's big. It's got 9 chapters of rules. It's got a full appendix that's pretty robust and easy to work with. Gives you 2 adventures, some ads for some of the games, and it comes with table reference pages in the back. And they're made of thicker paper, making them easier to find. Bob? Or Phil?
Yeah. This game definitely has a lot of old school influences. It has a lot of the original character classes, so fighter, thief, cleric, magic user. It also has species as classes, hearkening back to the oldest of old school games, with elf being the fighter wizard, dwarf being a type of fighter, and halfling, which is a type of thief. It is more about rulings than rules. We'll talk about that when we talk about in our own sections. So the game is actually thinner on rules in a lot of places, and kind of expects you to fill in the gaps. There are lots and lots of tables in this game, which is also a callback to its old school roots. It's most notable, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is every spell that a player can cast is also a table. And we'll talk about how that works, I think, in a little bit. It has a lot of classic influenced black and white line art inside the book as well. This book, while at 476 pages and full of tables, is at no means at a shortage of artwork. There is a ton of artwork inside this book. Okay, tell us about the core mechanic, Jer.
This is a D20 system, and the core system is D20 plus bonus. Those of you familiar with like D&D 3E or 5E will be familiar with this. It has ascending armor class. It's got reflex, will, and fortitude saving throws, and it's got stat bonuses for your 6 main attributes. And these get used for a lot of fun stuff and are actually more of the default mechanic for a lot of things, which make the game easy to work with. Bill?
All right, so some things about it that are unique. First of all, the dice. So beyond the standard polyhedral set of 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 20, this game adds in, let me see if I can remember them all, D3, D5, D7, I said 8,
There's a 9,
10, 12, 14, 16, 20, 24, and 30.
That sounds about right.
It adds in a host of additional weird shaped dice, and I say weird because if you're used to the normal polyhedrals, the additional ones are pretty weird. I will note the D7 as being one of the strangest.
The 5 and the 7 are like wacky.
Yeah, 5 and the 7 are pretty wacky. These dice are specialty. We'll talk about this later in the show. You are going to have to go places to find them. One of the unique things about the game is the dice chain. So rather than going for stacking bonuses, this game uses a dice chain where instead of bonuses, you just move up or down a die in the chain, which I think is really neat. Because you can basically just be like, oh, with your bonuses, roll a D24 to hit instead of a D20 to hit. Okay. This game has 0 level play. If you play this game as the book says, so if you play this game orthodox, you will play starting at level 0, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. There's a luck mechanic to this game. So there is some player mitigation. Players have a finite resource for mitigating outcomes in this game. And certain classes have different ways. So every class has a different way that they can use luck in general. And 2 of the classes can regenerate luck, where all the other ones, it is a finite resource that you can only recover through adventuring. Let's see, next thing. Classes give you all your abilities up front. So this is, I think this is kind of a neat thing, and we can talk about this in the discussion point as well. You do not go up through your progression of levels getting new powers and abilities. You basically get all of them at the start, and then you just get better at them as you go along. I think that's actually pretty cool. It makes low-level characters pretty awesome. Again, we should stop editorializing, but it does. Alignment-based healing is another thing so when a cleric goes to heal you, your alignment and theirs matter. The gods do not like when you heal their enemies and make it far more difficult. There are no feats. So as a D20 game, this is a thing that stands out. There are no feats in this game. There is something that replaces it for the fighter that I think is even cooler than feats, which is the mighty deeds. Simple skill system. No list of skills. Skills are based upon your background. If you have in your background justification for having the skill, you may roll a D20. If not, you roll a D10. There are, as I said before, every spell is a table. When you cast a spell, be it cleric or magic user, when you cast a spell, you roll a D20 with some bonuses, and what the spell does is based on the result you get for your rolls. So sometimes a spell can be pretty normal, and sometimes spells, if you roll high enough, can really do some wild stuff, which I think is fun. There's also another thing called spell burn, where wizards can actually temporarily use their stats to fuel their rolls on the spell table. Like you can burn 5 points of strength to get a +5 on your spell check. I don't think we do it very often in our game, but spell burn is absolutely a thing. And then lastly, as I said before, there are many tables. There are crit tables and fumble tables that can occur. So fumbles when in combat you roll a 1, and crit tables when you roll, I'm going to say a 20, but it's really when you roll the maximum number on your on the die that you're rolling to attack with. So, somebody's asking, is Spellburn temporary? It is. There is, you burn your attributes and they do come back later. Cool. So, Jared, what about the community that surrounds this game and the company?
I'd like to answer one question from the chat room. It'll take 1 minute.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The question was asked, why so many weird dice? The reason so many weird dice is that as you try different things, you will scale up and down the dice. So if you decide you want to take 2 attacks, instead of having a penalty to hit, you'll simply roll lower dice. So instead of rolling d20s, you might be rolling d12s to hit or something like that. So as you decide to try new things, you can do them, but you use smaller dice. And it makes it easy to keep track of the there's no penalties and minuses to worry about. You just get assigned smaller dice, which allows you to do a lot more gameplay because you can try things that aren't on your character sheet. You're just rolling with smaller dice. So it really pushes towards a lot of role playing. That's why you have the different types of dice. So you can scale up and down easily in the number of dice you have.
Yeah, when we get into the editorial part of this, I've got some theories as well about the dice. But yes, everything you said is true about the dice.
But the game also has a lot of nice support. Goodman Games has a lot of modules, and the modules are very old school, weird world game stuff. And there's also a very avid DIY community that make a lot of material. They share all their material, and they have a lot of support stuff like tables and apps and summaries and things like that. So it's got a good support out there, both from the manufacturer and from the gaming community, which makes it feel a lot better. So go ahead, Phil.
Yeah. All right. So cool. We're going to talk about our play experience now, and we're going to share our feelings, our personal feelings about the game. So, and again, we're going to get deeper into likes and dislikes, but these are kind of like our overall feelings. So, I think that, and this, I'm going to now chime in about the dice. I think this game works very hard to make it feel like the early days of gaming. So I think that this game, so some games have like a nostalgic factor in terms of the material they cover, which I think like almost every OSR fantasy game kind of does that. But I think what's genius about this game is that Goodman Games, and I think this is done purposely. I have no confirmation of this, but I'm just going to speculate here. I think Goodman Games engineered the nostalgic feeling into this game. And why? And I'll make some points to this. One, those extra dice. Those extra dice are weird. And I remember being 10 and getting my first set of polyhedrals and like literally being lost. Like which one's the 8? Which one's the 10? You know, like fumbling for them as a kid, right? And like having like the older kids have to show me like the diamond one is the 8, Phil. Oh, right. And you get that feeling again when you use the expanded set of dice. Like it purposely adds those dice in a way to make you feel like awkward about those dice again. Because I'm telling you, this game could run without those dice, but there's something about them that just makes it feel a little awkward. Also, the book is large and intimidating. When I was a kid, I was intimidated by my Dungeon Master's Guide, right? Hardcover AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, right? Big tome. This book is way bigger. Like it is a big ass book. And I am older, but I am still like, oh my God, this book is enormous, right? And so full of rules. And we'll talk about later about things we don't like about the intimidation part. I don't always think it helps it, but the book gives you this feel like it is like the old days of playing. And again, back to like the so many tables to roll on. Like I remember being a kid and going through my player's handbook, my DM's guide, right? Like that you got to roll on this table, you got to look on this table for these, for these things, that kind of thing. Like I think this game goes out of its way, even down to the part where they put the ads into the back of the book, right? Those ads are like a call out to like old school TSR and other early like 80s games that had ad pages in the back of the book for their other products. Like this game knows exactly what it wants to be and is working hard to do it. And its target audience, while I suspect it is perfectly open and welcoming, and I will say this, is perfectly open and welcome to new players. Its target audience is like us. It's people who like played D&D back in the day, and you want to play something, but it's different. It feels like it's old school gaming, but it's not.
Yeah.
So, and then lastly, I'll just say that one of my overall experiences with this game, especially from running it for a while, this game has a strong central core. It's a pretty straightforward D20 game, but it has far less rules. Like if you compared, so I know that it's a 476-page book, but if you pull the rules out of it, and I did this because I made myself like a little cheat PDF. If you pull the rules out of it and compare it to 3.5, it has far less rules than 3.5.
Yep.
It is actually a far lighter game, and it relies a lot more on rulings, right? Which is a very old school thing, right? More rulings, less rules. So it does that with a stripped down D20 core mechanic. And I think it makes it actually pretty flexible. And yet if you played 3.5, 5, whatever, the game also feels really familiar at the same time. All right, Jerry, what about you? What are some of your play experiences?
First of all, I think it definitely captures the mechanical feel of the old gaming, especially the old BX gaming, basic and expert sets from my day with the Earl Orders covers. The fact that you have species as a class. You don't play an elven wizard, you play an elf. You play a halfling, you play a dwarf. The fact that the hit points are low and deadly, it's especially during the funnel, which we'll talk about later, it is not unusual that one combat kills you. And those of us who played back in the days know that you could create a character that died on their first encounter, which captures that feel, and it's a lot of fun. It's easier to not die in DCC, but it still captures that feel. And that combined with the species as a class makes it kind of fun to give you that nostalgia. But the thing is, even with all that, you still have a chance of succeeding. It managed to bring some of the modern sensibilities to old school gaming. We're going to talk about that later on. Well, actually, my next thing. Because I like that it takes the 70s and 80s games and updates them to what we think of as modern game theory and gameplay, what they should feel like. Despite the size of the book, it's mostly rules lighter. If you're not playing a spellcaster, you're pretty much playing with like 4 pages of the book. It's weird, but fun. It's got that strange kind of otherworldly feel to it in the tone, which we'll talk about later, but it still manages to be fun. It's not weird and depressing or weird and defeating. It's weird, but they managed to find a way to make that fun. They found a way to make the tone and setting very important. Every adventure you play has a definite feel to it. And if you can string almost any of the adventures together and make a campaign because of the way that they set things up. And we'll talk about that again later on. And lastly, the artwork and the stories in the game help to direct the feel, direct how your characters are involved and what you're doing and why you're doing it and what's going on in the small world around you, and the way that the often cruel and malicious gods are basically inflicting themselves upon the people. All of that is put together by both the design of the game and the artwork that they've used. So it has that feel. Those of us who grew up at that time, when you got a new module from TSR, you saw that cover art, when you saw the Bahir blowing lightning on a bunch of people that were trapped, or you saw the giant tentacled monster looming over the guy in the foreground, you had a feel for what that adventure was going to be like just by looking at the cover. And a lot of that doesn't come across with modern artwork. And so they've managed to do the same thing with their stuff. Bob?
I'm going to actually tack right on to that last statement you made. Just slightly off topic, that actually has happened in not just gaming art. That happened in comic books as well. Because back in the day, you could buy a comic book and the cover was like what was going on in the story.
Yep.
And there was like, visceral stuff that you're like, oh, I got to read this issue. And more often than not now, it's like, here's a splash page cover with just a bunch of artwork on it. and it has nothing to do with what's inside the book.
Yeah.
And to me, having that feel, definitely, like you said, it gives you an idea what's going on in that module. Starts getting you pumped up for what's inside there right out of the gate. I agree with pretty much everything you guys have already said. I don't want to rehash all of that. And it definitely leans on the nostalgia. I think they, like what Phil said, there was a lot of purposeful choices made in the way they put this together that it kind of grabs at your nostalgia strings and pulls on them and says, come, look at what we've got here. Remember this stuff from back in the day. We're going to give you some feels about this stuff. And I think it was very well done in that respect.
So I'll just say that I will say, and I don't have it with me, I wish I had grabbed it to look it up. I might on the break quickly pull up the PDF and see if I can't find it. For all of its nostalgia, it actually has a statement. I think it's packed into the beginning of it. I want to say it's in the beginning of the book, or I've seen it on the website, but I feel like I'm going to have to go track this down. There's actually a very good inclusion statement at the beginning that this game is for everybody. That yes, while it doesn't say yes while it's engineered for nostalgia, and it definitely is, right? Because it is going after, for a lack of a better term, right, in predominantly middle-aged white dudes, right? Like that's probably the main target audience for this game. It does actually make a statement about this game being for everybody and encouraging that. So I will try to go find it and see if I can't hunt it down or if Bob's already looking for it. But I do remember there being a pretty strong statement about that early on. So I don't want people to be like, oh, this is a nostalgia game, so clearly like it's not going to be for me. This game is really open to everybody. I like what it's doing nostalgia wise, but other people can certainly access this game and play it as well. Okay.
It would be a very easy game to teach to somebody who has never played a role-playing game. It's got very simple concepts.
I agree. And the other thing that we didn't talk about is while there are weird dice, you don't actually really use the weird dice until first level. Yeah. At 0 level, you really only need regular dice, which is also something really smart about this game, is that it's made to be accessible for the standard role player. Okay, so cool. I'm going to jump into the next section, which is things we like. We're just going to call out things about the game that we find exciting and fun. And Jerry, you're going to start us off, right?
Yep. The first thing I really like about the game, you can do everything your character can do from level 1. If you're a spellcaster, you've got a ton of spells. If you're a fighter, you've got all your fighter abilities. If you're a rogue, you've got all your rogue abilities and so on. As soon as you hit level 1 and get a class, you've got all of your abilities. No more waiting till level 4 to be able to do 2 attacks or whatever. And so you might not be good at it, but you're going to be at least somewhat mildly competent at it. So you can start the game as that kick-ass wizard or deadly fighter. You're still going to be fragile, but you might be rolling smaller dice, but it's not that you can't try it. This means that you get to experience the fun part of being your character right away. Those of us who played older games know that there are some character classes you're like, well, yeah, if I suffer through 3 levels, I finally get wild shape and I can do cool stuff. If this game had a druid, you'd be able to change to an animal right off the bat. You might be rolling D6s to hit, but you'd still get to be an animal. And along with that, you have really weird magic that's zany and always interesting, and they don't make you run out of spells. If you're a wizard with 5 spells, you're a wizard with 5 spells right off the bat, and you can cast those 5 spells. You'll get more when you level up, but you don't have to worry about running out of spells. You can cast that same spell over and over and over again. The second thing I like is the funnel. The funnel is the 0 level part of the adventure. When you start the game, you are just running people without character classes. You roll randomly, or they actually have a nice random generator online where they generate them for you. So you might be playing like a barrister, a cheese merchant, a butcher, and a dung collector. And those are your characters.
Dung farmer,
yeah. And it makes the characters kind of goofy fun. You've got some weird random equipment and random characters. You're running 4 characters at once, and if one of them dies, you just draw another one and bring it in. And it ends up being a really fun game, and it's the right way to run a survival horror game because your characters are crunchy and fragile. And your goal was really just to survive the adventure and achieve the end with at least one of your 4 characters. So it's a lot of fun. It's quick, it's goofy, and it really captures some of the fun of those low-level adventures when you were still playing a game where, oh my God, a skeleton, it might kill half the party kind of thing. Then you hit level 1 and things get kick-ass.
Yeah, I'll say something else about the funnel, really. I'm sorry, you're still talking about level 1.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, talk about level 1.
I just said when you hit level 1, things change up. And so that's it. So go ahead.
No, I was going to say the book goes on to talk about like why the funnel exists. Mm-hmm. Right? So what the game does not want you to do is to optimize your character build, right? So it's not like playing Pathfinder where you want like the exact array of stats and I want this feat and that feat and I need this bonus and that bonus. Like everything's randomly generated and you take 4 characters into, it's called a funnel for a reason, right? Like it's going to winnow down the party. Mm-hmm. And the idea behind it is by the time you get through the funnel, you will be emotionally attached to these little 0-level characters in a way that just making a cool character like in a program or whatever isn't going to give you at first level, right? So by the time your character hits first level, like you love this character. You and this character have been through some shit together and you're excited to play them even if they've got like a 6 intelligence, right? Like mock.
We're going to discuss that later on.
Okay,
I don't 100% agree with you on that.
All right.
We'll talk about that when we get to things we don't like. So go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I will say it says in the book that this is part of what. This is part of the idea is that you will like by the time you have your first level character, your first level characters will have some experience, like some personality and story behind them.
Yes, that's true.
And I know from I know from the first funnel we played, like I fell in love with your barrister, who then died in like the final combat. And I was like, no, like I wanted that character to make it like, and did not.
Yeah. All of my snarky characters die early. I really missed the, I can't remember the one that was in this one who was basically just trying to convince everybody to do everything for her. But she died too. Go ahead.
So, okay. Anyway, go ahead. I think Bob, if you're done, Jerry, I think Bob's up next.
Yep. All right. So one of the things that I really like is that the die progression is a really fun way to show growth of competence or degree of danger. So it's like you're a first level character and you roll a fumble. You're wearing leather armor. You're rolling a particular die on the fumble table. But if you get better armor, the die type becomes bigger. So if you're wearing, full plate armor, you're rolling a much bigger die, which has way more bad things on the table for you to be worried about when you fumble.
When you're big and heavy.
Yeah, it's big and heavy. It's dangerous to do that. When you're the fighter doing the mighty deed, you start out with a D3 as your mighty deed die, and then it goes up to a D4, and then it goes up after that, and so you get better at doing the thing as these dice go up, and I think that's a really cool way to portray that growth or danger mechanism. The game has deceptively low latency. You've got a table of 4 to 5 people. What we had like 5 people with 4 characters each running through the funnel, and you're cranking through those characters going around the table, and you're still getting stuff done. You're still enjoying yourself. You're having fun. You're still invested. It's not like you're like, oh God, there's like 20 characters that have to go before me, and you're like sitting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Like there's a little bit of time that you have to spend waiting for that to come around, but there's stuff going on that is still interesting, and you're like, oh God, who's gonna die? Like who's gonna have something weird happen? And so
plus if the adventure goes well, you don't all have 4 characters each after a while.
Exactly. So that really is a surprise, because you figure, oh God, 5 players with 4 characters each, this is going to be a slog. Not so. It really moves. And having a good GM definitely helps that too.
Yes.
I mean, if you have a complete noob that doesn't know what they're doing, I can see there being, more latency going on. But it's deceptive in its amount of latency. I love bringing up the keywords, the buzzwords that we use.
Makes sense.
One of the other things that I already mentioned before, but I really love the Mighty Deed for the fighter. The Mighty Deed is basically, here's this die. You roll this every time you make an attack. If you get multiple attacks, you roll it for each attack. Okay? It's going to add to your attack roll. It's going to add to your damage roll. And if you get a 3 or higher on it, the Mighty Deed that you choose to try and do will actually happen. The key is you have to remember to state what your Mighty Deed attempt is. Otherwise, you're not getting a deed because you forgot to mention it. So you have to kind of think of some stuff that you want to do to utilize it, but it's there and it's cool. It's like doing wild feats.
Yes, that was the point I wanted to make, is that the Mighty Deed die is what replaces the feat system.
So you're like, oh, gee, we're fighting against somebody that's got like, let's just say that this monster thing that we're fighting wields a sword, and if it hits you with the sword, it does like super heinous damage and it's ugly. If it hits you with its fist or its claws, it's not so bad. But when it hits with the sword, oh my, that's terrible. Well, my Mighty Deed this round is going to be, I'm going to disarm that thing. I'm going to knock the sword out of its hand. Bam, there you go. Oh, but next time I'm fighting something else, if you're a fighter in one of these other games and it's like I chose disarm as my feat or whatever, that's what you're locked into until you can get another one. With the Mighty Deed, I'm going to disarm this guy. Next time around, it's like, oh, this guy has a hard time hitting if he can't smell the opponent that he's going after. So I'm going to bloody his nose, so I'm going to foul up his smell. I'm going to try and confuse this thing and distract it so that the thief can get a backstab in, which is something we didn't do at first. Chris helped us out with that one. I was like, oh, we should be doing that more to give the thief more spotlight time with his backstab.
Yeah.
Things like that. So the Mighty Deed goes a long way to doing a lot of different stuff. You just have to do a little upfront thinking to try and think of some stuff that you could use it for and be creative.
Yep, and the book gives the GM guidelines on how to kind of interpret how high of a Mighty Deed number you might need for a certain effect.
Exactly, which will definitely play in when you get into the bigger dice for that as well.
Yep, but the thing to note is that no matter what you try to do, as long as you get a 3, you will get something.
Yep.
So I think there was a case where we were fighting this the wolf worm that could swallow things whole, and somebody ran their sword through its mouth. In order to prevent it from swallowing things. And I was like, okay, you'll need this high of a roll, but if you get a 3, like it still gives it like a -2 to hit. Like no matter what, you're going to get something out of this. I think that one's I think that's pretty
These are cool. Phil.
Okay. So my first comment is, and now I want to tread carefully on this based on the current discourse that's going on Twitter right now. These adventures are more, I would say, morally black and white, in that there is like whatever is in the bottom of the dungeon is not good. And I will say this, whatever's in the bottom of the dungeon is almost always some like elder god or something, right? Like
an eldritch horror, an elder god,
cultists, like, but there's no, like these modules are made to be simple. Like they are made to be dungeon crawls, right? And you are made to go in there and bust some stuff up. And get treasure and stuff like that. Again, all the trappings that go with traditional fantasy for that. What I will say it doesn't do is it uses evil outside of alignment, because in the current adventure we're playing, the bad guys are actually lawful. They're just evil, right? Like, they're bad people. They're bad cultists. And in the other game we played, like in the last adventure we played, that thing was like an otherworld alien god, right? Like the and I'm trying to think what we played. Oh, and before that, it was actually just gods of chaos messing around. So they are, what you call it? They are not, these adventures are pretty simple morally, right? There's not a difficult moral terrain to cross in these games. Things that are bad in the games are bad. And things that are good are good. Their adventure. So I'll go on to the other part of the adventures, which I love.
I'd like to state real quick, because you keep mentioning dungeon crawl, and I think this is important because this is what kept me away from the game for so long. When they say dungeon crawl, they don't just mean kick in the door, kill the monster, take the treasure. It's definitely a room-by-room dungeon exploration, but they make a point of having interesting encounters that often have role-playing exploration or moments of wonder encounters, as opposed to just, room 6 has 10 goblins in it kind of thing. And that makes the game a lot more fun. And I want to, because that's why I didn't play Dungeon Crawl Classics for years, because somebody says Dungeon Crawl and I'm like, nope, I'm done. And
no,
it's
and
not
in fact,
the same thing.
You bring up a good point. The experience point system in the game is not based on what you kill or what you take. It's actually based on how many encounters you survive.
Yep.
And survive being the optimal word.
Yes.
Survive could be run away, could be negotiate, could be figure out, could be killing, right? It depends.
Yep.
But survive is actually the key word to its experience system. Survive encounters. Okay. The other thing I love about these adventures, they are wondrous. I have not encountered a DCC adventure that is like the Warren of Goblins, right? Yeah. Like, even the 0 level adventures are like, have like demigods and like things that should not be at the bottom of the dungeons, right? Like, they are, they have this great ability to take like a 0 level adventure, an adventure that should just grind up characters. And they make them in a way that like it's terrifying, but somewhat survivable. Not 100% survivable, but definitely not TPK.
Yeah, I mean, your gut instinct is like, oh, here's this tentacled horror from beyond space and time. Like, what the hell are a bunch of 0 levels doing going against this thing? Yeah. We should be fighting a kobold or whatever. Like, no, that's not how it goes. It's like, you're going in there, you're terrified as hell. Weird, goofy crap is going to happen.
Oh.
So people are going to die.
Yep.
And you're going to come out and you're going to be like, wow, all right, I made it.
One of the other things that you mentioned, so I'll just agree with you. Latency of this game is low. Like, once you get the hang of the mechanic, and more importantly, once you get the hang of your character, boy, you can just move. Like, you just move through this game pretty effortlessly when it comes to mechanics, which I adore. And then lastly, which is the thing that you guys haven't really gotten because you've been players, the cartography in these modules are so wild.
Yeah.
So you would think, for all the hearkening back to classic D&D, that these would be the blue and white maps. They're not. Their cartographer will draw out the map, and then in all of the empty space, they will draw illustrations into all of the empty spaces of the map, often referencing the rooms that they're near. Sometimes showing you like a 3D view, or sometimes it's just got like a plaque with a warning on it. Like, I will actually show you a couple of the maps from some of the other, like the adventures you've been on. their maps are like a thing of beauty. Like I love their cartography
They're
style.
super evocative.
Yes.
They're amazing.
It's a little tricky with Roll20.
Yeah.
Because when I do Fog of War, like I have to be careful sometimes not to show you the things on the side, because sometimes they're kind of secrets to how to solve encounters and stuff. But from a game master perspective, like when I flipped open the first adventure that's actually in the book and looked at the map for it, I was like, this is stupid. Like this artwork is amazing. So love that cartography. Okay, and with that, we're gonna pause for a second, collect our breaths. We're gonna check in with our chat room. But first, we're gonna talk about another show on the Misdirected Mark Network. Bob, tell me a little bit about Zhenghu Hustle.
Yeah, so come train alongside fellow students Eric Farmer and Eli Kurtz in Zhenghu Hustle. Eric and Eli make their kung fu stronger by watching wuxia films, then discussing how to apply their observations to game design. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Yeah.
Cool. How's the chat room doing?
Chat room is good. They're plugging along with us. We actually hit the stuff that would have made it into this particular break already because you guys wanted to call it out immediately.
Yeah, it's okay.
So we are caught up.
Okay, good. I see that we had to explain Gong Farmer.
Yeah. Schmitty actually is asking no spells per day.
No, you have spells known. The way that you lose a spell is if you fail your roll. Like you have to roll above an 11 for a spell to go off. But if you roll above the 11, you get to keep the spell.
Yeah.
If you roll below the 11, then it often tells you the spell has failed and lost, and then you have to study to get it back.
Yeah. Which is that's a leveling up thing to get it back.
No, you just got to go.
No,
you just got to go sleep.
Just rest. Okay,
like,
yeah.
You got to rest to get it back.
Yeah.
So the cool part is if you're a wizard and you're a first level wizard, you can just keep casting spells until you run out of them. And it took I think it took Jerry and not Jerry. I think it took Jim, Glenn. I think it took both of them a little bit to get used to the idea of like, I cast a spell.
Yeah.
I'm casting another spell. Like why not? The worst that's going to happen is I'm going to run out of it at some point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, wizards definitely, wizards are cool. Like,
and wacky. There's some wild stuff on those tables.
Yeah. There's another thing that we didn't talk about, that every time you get a spell, there's a spell side effect table.
Yep.
That when you cast the spell, it does things to you. And some of them are mildly funny. Some of them are way more serious. I think, what was it? Isn't there one, if you cast the spell, like somebody you know dies?
Somebody nearby dies.
Somebody nearby dies.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's potentially useful side effects, like the one that Glenn's got. Glenn's which spell was it?
Oh, I forget which spell it is, but
if you're holding something metal in your hand, it crumbles into rust. It like breaks down.
Right. And if you aren't holding something in your hand, something randomly around you that's metal turns into dust. So you might think like, well, that's awful. Except that one time you guys had to get past this iron gate. And so Glenn ran up and grabbed the lock of the gate and cast the spell and crumbled the lock.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Which was great, right? That's like great out of the box thinking, right?
Yeah. He also used it to do somebody's armor. He did it on. He like touched somebody's armor and did that.
To ruin it?
Might have. So. Yeah.
I think he tried it. I don't remember if it was successful or not, but he did that against an opponent. Yeah.
It makes spells fun and creative as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, and I think I can't remember if it's a rule or a house rule, but we allow you to take any spell effect lower than the one you rolled, because sometimes the one you roll might not be quite what you wanted, but the one like one or two below it.
And that seems like a completely reasonable thing. Like you can't go higher because they're typically graded on an intensity or severity or whatever scale. But
Yeah.
if you want to go lower, that seems perfectly reasonable.
If I remember correctly, Jim has a character who, for one of their spells, their effect is they roll a d30 instead of a d20. And there was an encounter that should have been a reasonable multi-turn encounter for you guys that Jim stepped up, rolled for the wizard, rolled like a 20-something total, and just burnt the encounter it was those two worms in the tunnel. And he just like burnt both of them into like a crisp in one shot.
Good time.
You don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Yep. Jump back in.
Back in.
Yep.
Cool.
Back in.
All right. So we've talked about things we like. It's not all a bed of roses here.
No.
What are some things that what are some things you dislike about the game? And they don't have to be disliked completely. They could be things that you're just critical about or whatever. But
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob. Tell me some things.
Yeah, so these funky dice are not easy to find at a reasonable price. They are a niche product inside a niche hobby. And so they can be hard to find, period, sometimes, depending on what the current popularity of the game is and what's stock and everything. And then when you do find them, sometimes they're not the cheapest thing in the world. I forget. I think I spent $25 on my first set.
25 is I did some research on this. 25 is the going rate for a set if it's the cheaper sets and if they're popular or if they're common.
Yeah.
As soon as they become difficult to get, that jumps up to about 45.
Yeah. Whereas your typical regular polyhedron set, when you go out, you can find numerous places where you can get your standard 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 20 without too much trouble. And they're not, you can get super expensive ones by going up in quality craftsmanship and materials, but you can get decent stuff at a reasonable cost without any problem. But these, they can be difficult to find at a good price. In addition to that, when you're trying to figure out what the hell you're about to roll, and it's like, oh, I got all these funky shaped dice. I know the shapes of the 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 20. It's like, where's my 14? Well, it's kind of similar to the 20, but it's not quite. And the 14 and the 16 and the 20 blend together a lot. And you're like, which one is it? And you got to turn it to try and see where's the highest number. Like, oh, wait, this is the 16. Shit. I got to put.
So I just saw I was on the Goodman website doing trying to look around for that statement, which I couldn't find, unfortunately. But I just saw they have a product that's out of stock, which is a little tray that has spots for all the different dice, and you put them
shaped.
Yeah, you put them in there, and then take that, like you put them back when you're done rolling.
Got it.
So my solution to your problem is I have this dice tray that is not fancy, like it has actual specific spaces, but it had a couple rows, and I have my dice from lowest at the left bottom to highest in the right top, and it's sectioned. So like I have like the 3 and the 4 together.
Yeah.
Like I have the 3, 4, and 5 together. I have some 6s, the 7. I have the 8 by itself, right? Like I have them in compartments. So like when I need the 16, it's in the compartment with the 16 and the 14, and I just have to pull both of them out for a second and quick look to see which one has more facets, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helps.
Yeah, or you can take the time at the beginning and just like line them up, figure out what's what, line them up, and then be like, okay, and that. But it can cause some mental, like, which one am I?
This is a thing where Roll20 ends up being an advantage, because with Roll20, it's very easy to simply make your little macros for any die size you want.
Yeah.
So when we play online now, I have a bunch of buttons across the bottom that took me 3-4 minutes to set up.
Yep.
I can just hit D14.
And even if you don't make a macro, you can just go /R space D13. Boom.
Yep.
It rolls that number.
D13's not a...
Well, whatever.
Well,
but
it could be now.
So that's a nice little mitigation factor. The other thing that I'm not a super big fan of is the non-human player character constraints. You're going to play a dwarf. You're a dwarf, which means you're a fighter. Period. End of story. You can't be a dwarf wizard in this game, You can't be
No.
a halfling fighter. If you're a dwarf, you're a white fighter. If you're a halfling, you're a thief. If you're an elf, you're a fighter wizard. That's it. And that,
Yep.
like, as far as constraints go, it's not the worst thing. But I would prefer. I like the broader spectrum of I can play whatever species I want, and then I can also be like, oh, whatever class I want, and like, let's go. So, mildly annoying.
No, I think that's legit. I mean, that is definitely a design decision that the designers picked. They picked it for nostalgia reasons, but I agree. Like it is limiting in what you can do with it.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I'm gonna pass it to Phil, and old man needs to use the restroom.
Yep. So I will say that there's a bit of a learning curve to this game. The core mechanic will come very quickly. Some of the subsystems of the game are a little tricky. There is a subsystem for wizard versus wizard combat that is bafflingly hard. So difficult, we've never used it in game. It is like almost a mini game unto itself. And if you have wizards battling it out against each other in the middle of a party that's also fighting, you have to layer it on top of combat. And I was like, it's too much. It is probably the one thing I do not like about the game. That spell versus spell combat seems really cool. Like it's got some tables and some cool things can happen, whatever. But it is definitely the hardest piece of the game to learn, and it's not even a thing I've even attempted at this point. The tables can be a bit cumbersome. Yes, you can get the GM screen if you like GM screens. Yes, you can use the reference tables at the back of the book. I myself have a preference. There is a book on Lulu that somebody made where they basically just extracted all the tables from the book and put them into a book. So when I play, I often have my book of tables with me. But the app also manages this. And the app... I'm trying to remember the name. I think I have it on my phone as well as I definitely have it on my iPad. Is it the Crawler, Jer? Yes, the Crawler.
The Crawler. Yep.
Yeah, the Crawler is a free app that you can download from. It's not from. It's from. I think it's Purple. Is it Purple Sorcerer, right?
Yeah, Purple something.
Yeah, I think it's Purple Sorcerer is the creator of the app, and they put out the app for free, and it has a ton of the stuff that you need for the game. It has the spell tables, fumble tables. It has an animated die roller for all the different dice, all of those things. Like the app is pretty helpful in that case. But again, tables are a thing you're going to have to navigate, and the fumble and critical tables are more common than you think. You will run into them quite a bit. Lastly, I will say the thing I'm not thrilled with, right, is the intimidation factor of this game. Every time I mention to somebody that, like, oh, I play DCC, or oh, you should come play DCC with us, and they think about the size of that book, right? Especially my indie game friends who are like, whoa, no. Like that book is an 8.5 by 11, 475 page book. I don't play games that size. I play like 6 games could fit in that size, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always like, yeah, but that's not how complicated the game is. Like, it's just really full of tables. It is hard sometimes to get people to get into playing it. And it's a shame because I think that actually it's a super fun game.
Yep.
I find the book to be amusingly large. It is really a tome, but I do find it to be amusingly large. But you almost never use the whole book. And in fact, I don't know if people who are playing any of the wizards know this. You can go to Purple Sorcerer, I think their website. You can pick all your spells, and it will make you, if I'm remembering this correctly, it will make you a PDF of just the tables for your spells, so that you can actually make your own like little grimoire of spells, so that you don't have to be like, wait, I'm going into the book to find your spell table. Cool. Those are my critiques of the game. Jerry, how about you?
First of all, lack of choice when it comes to characters. Because of the way the funnel works, as much fun as it is, you get what you get out of the funnel. You may have been playing a character you really like, but they're often going to die. And oftentimes, the character you least cared about ends up surviving because you used them the least in the funnel. This happened last season where the one character that I had like no investment at all survived, and then they died luckily, and I got to pick up somebody else. And even now, like I had 3 characters survive the funnel, 2 of which I thought were kind of interesting, and the third one, I was like, I'll just take whatever I get with this character. I really didn't like him all that much, and as soon as we added a 5th player, I'm like, here, you can take this character, because so that can be a problem. Also, when you're rolling the character, it is 3d6 down the line, and you can end up with horribly substandard characters with non-heroic attributes. You're playing a character and they've got, a 6 intelligence, a 6 charisma, a 7 wisdom, and you really wanted to play a wizard or a cleric or a bard or something. So that's limiting your class options. It is often not unusual to have a character whose total stat bonuses are in big minuses, like -2, -3, -4. And there's a reason we don't do this for games anymore. This is the reason why most games don't make you roll your characters randomly, because you can end up with characters that are very tough to play. That being said, they can also be fun to play if you play upon those weaknesses, as long as there aren't too many of them. This season, the characters are a lot more fun. Last season, I had 3 characters who the best of them had a net 0 bonus. Most of their stats were they were weak and clumsy and stupid and not too wise and not likable. And those are tough to play over time. That can be a problem. And there's really no way to increase stats unless you end up with like a magical wishing well or something like that. And the last thing is that because you roll 3d6 down the line, one of the things that every character gets is a birth sign that gives them a bonus based on their birth sign. So you might get things like Sign of the Bull, add your luck bonus to all your melee attacks, or Sign of the Wizard, add your luck bonus to all your spellcasting rolls, which is wonderful as long as your luck bonus is a positive number. If your luck bonus is a negative number, which is often the case, you have a birth sign and you can end up with things like, this happened, like here's my fighter, but he also gets a -2 to all melee attacks. And that could be a problem because there's no way to undo that without magic. The third thing I say is, yes, these dice are expensive. And this is from somebody, I own well over 1,000 dice. I have sets and sets and sets. I've got well over 200 just sets of dice alone. And because they're expensive, and because of the problem of the different size dices, the D14, the D16, with a game like this, I would normally, to make it easier to do, I would just color code them. My D4 would be a blue, and my D6 would be a red, and my D20 would be an off blue. You can't do that because the dice are really expensive. And
they're also not easy to come by, and they don't often come in singles. Like you can't get, like, it's not like when you go to ChessX and there's like, a table full of like 8s, 10s, like you can get like the green set of DCC dice. The white set of DCC dice. Like it's not you're right. Like you can't do the thing where I want to color code my dice, like I want my D16 to be orange.
Or
like,
you lose your D16. Gone. You can't just find a D16 and be like, I'm gonna buy that one die. No.
And I'll tell you, most of the dice I've seen are the ugliest color palettes they could come up with.
They're not super pretty.
When they chose purple, they chose the most unattractive bland purple they could. The green is not Kelly green or lime green or vibrant green. It's kind of a baby puke kind of green. The red is kind of a washed out, kind of burgundy, kind of maroon. It's just, and I know they kind of picked that for some aesthetic. I'm not sure what the aesthetic is, but these are not dice that I would ever like use in any other game or buy because they look nice. Now you can buy nicer sets of dice, but but again, now you're getting up into the $40, $50 dice sets. And so like,
I have, I did that, right? I bought the Game Science precision ones, and mine are translucent red, and they're delightful, right? Like I love mine. They cost me like $50, and they weren't colored either. Mine are actually colored with crayon.
Yeah.
I went full old school, and I spent a Sunday morning at Panera one day with the white crayon, coloring in all of my dice
awesome.
and then wiping them down. And
that whole thing with the colors was the main reason why when I bought my 2 sets, I bought a white set and I bought a black set. There's nothing like, it's like an unpleasing, unaesthetic green. No, it's like they're black and white. There we go. Done.
When I started playing our game, I came into this a bit later than you guys did. I was just trying to find a set online, and at that time, the only set I could find for under $50 was this one or the off green, and this one was like $30. Oh no, it was less. I got it on sale, but it was like this was what I had. Normally, if I find a set of dice I like, I'll buy several sets. I got into Genesis. And I bought 6 sets of dice so we could have them to play with at the table. I may someday buy a second set of DCC dice, but not likely.
Yeah, I will tell you, I'm scanning Game Science's webpage right now, and they have some of the DCC dice in individual, but they are like severe. They're like one color.
Yeah,
like you could buy a D14, but it's like light blue.
How much is it?
$2.
Well, that's not bad.
Yeah,
you can actually put together a set
especially
of dice
for a replacement. Like you're like, oh
yeah, but I'm just saying, like the D16
quality.
is also the same blue.
Yeah.
So I mean, the dice are definitely a thing, right? And they're not a complete barrier to entry because you can use the app.
And if you're going to be predominantly playing online,
like
then Roll20 will do all the rolling for you. So
and truthfully, if you're playing as a table, if everybody has a set of regular polyhedrals and one person in the group has the funky dice and you put them in the middle of the table, you will all get by fine. Because you still predominantly roll a D20. Sword, like a long sword or a short sword does D6, right? Like all the normal dice are still there. You use those other dice in situations like two-handed fighting. You roll 2 D16s, not a D20 -4 and a D20 -2. You roll 2 D16s, that kind of thing. So it's not impossible to overcome, but you are not wrong, right? The dice are not pretty. There are not 10 manufacturers making dice. Game Science makes them, Impact makes them, and Dungeon Crawl Classics sells specific sets that are based on the characters on the cover of their book. In whatever color they feel like that character embodies. And again, and you're not wrong, right? They do look like those old Armory dice, and I had a shit ton of those old Armory dice. And they were prettier. They were prettier than the TSR dice, but they're by today's standards.
I would argue against that too, man. I love those old plastic TSR
the
dice.
the crumblers.
I will stand on that mountain.
You will fight that hill.
I will fight that hill. I collect those. I still collect those dice.
The phrase you're looking for is die on that hill.
I don't know if I want to die on it.
I won't die on that hill because I'll have a bag full of crumbly dice to beat people with. So.
They'll just crumble.
Fill up a sock with those.
My original set of basic dice look like they're Thanos' dice, man. They look like they're gonna turn to dust at any moment.
There are no corners on my original D20 anymore.
No, my original D20 is more of a ball than it is a die. Yes.
All right, we should probably hit the next thing.
Yep, strategies and play styles. So, hey, if you're going to get into DCC for any reason, like maybe when game days and cons are a thing and I show up with a DCC game, like Gator did, because Gator at GatorCon played some DCC with me. He liked it. Maybe you're going to get into playing some DCC with people and you want to get the most out of the game. So here are some of our tips. Bob?
Yeah, both of mine kind of go hand in hand. Ride it like you stole it, especially in the funnel. Just go. Just do it. Don't be afraid to try anything. Just let your heart run free.
Yeah, there's no TPK in the funnel. Like if you lose all your characters,
you get
the
more.
GM's supposed to just give you more.
Yeah. There's always going to be another body that you can throw into the fray, but yeah, just lean into it, have fun, and try everything you can think of. Like, oh, I want to try this. Okay, let's do it. Just go to town.
Yeah.
What is the site where they can go and just download pre-generated characters?
I think that's also Purple Sorcerer.
Yeah, you can go describe that real quick before we jump back to Bob.
Yeah, so I do this all the time when I'm prepping to run a funnel for people. You can go to Purple Sorcerer's game, and they have. I mean, first of all, Purple Sorcerer's game's got so much stuff for DCC. But one of the tools they have is a zero level party generator. So you just go to the webpage, and it gives you a whole bunch of options so that you can customize it up. Like you could take out species. So if you're playing only humans for some reason, you can knock those out. You can pick different rule books, like if you want the DCC core rule book, or like they've got a whole bunch of adventures, like you can get some specifics.
Yeah, they've got a lot of options here you can do for occupation sources.
You can do dice method, which I love. They have 3d6 as Crom intended.
Yep.
And then, they have some other methods. Anyway, what you do is then you can set them up, and you can actually make them 4 to a page. They'll make like little tiny character sheets. And you just tell it how many you need, and it will pump out like a whole mess of character sheets.
Yeah.
I tend to just take them, cut out the sheets and make a stack of them and throw them on the table.
To one of Jerry's points earlier about having characters that have, their total aggregate is a negative ability score bonus. The Purple Sorcerer funnel creating thing will actually give you the option to say, I want my minimum total bonus allowed per sheet to be, like -2, grand total, or 0. Like you can't have any character whose total bonuses is less than 0. So he may have a minus, but he's got a plus to offset it, that kind of thing. So that's also good. You can tweak those things.
Yeah. So it's and it's super helpful. Like if you're a GM, like running to that site and going to whip up a whole bunch of 0 level characters, fantastic. I mean, you can roll them. The game has the rules for how to roll them. Yeah. But if I'm doing it in a con space, I like to just bring like a big old stack of them because it has all the bonuses in there. It has starting equipment and all. Yep. Like you just grab them and go.
Yeah, it's nice to have a huge stack of those that you can just.
Oh yeah.
Agreed.
Yep.
All right, Jer.
Yeah, go ahead, Jer.
All right. Okay, my thing would be, first of all, take magic whenever possible. If you can play a spellcaster with one of your characters, do it. It just makes everything more interesting. Just play it. If you want to play a character that you've never played before, play a spellcaster. The spells are so weird and fun, they're neat. Number 2, the second thing I would suggest, make copies of the pages for your spells so you have them on hand. We've already talked about the apps that allow you to do that. That app is really useful. I would suggest, as Bob mentioned, make a list of mighty deeds that you want to play.
Yep.
If nothing else, I'm going to try to slam this guy with my shield and knock him into somebody else. I'm going to try to create an advantage or create an opening for the thief to backstab. I'm going to try to hit him in the foot so he can't move. Just pick something. Make a list so you don't forget. The next thing I'll tell you is get armor early. Any piece of armor you can pick up, doesn't matter. If you're a wizard, just get a shield, keep carrying it around with you, something. Use teamwork. Teamwork is vital to surviving the game. We've been in a lot of games where your character might not be super useful in this fight because of their penalties, but you could do something. But being able to stand there and take a hit for somebody, or being able to assist somebody or help or anything along that line, you learn teamwork early on. And when you're doing the funnel, you've got 3 to 4 characters. You can teamwork all by yourself. And lastly, don't get attached to your characters early on. They're going to die. They're going to die a lot. Don't be afraid to play them as much as possible. But when your character dies, be prepared for it. And the first time we played this, None of my characters survived the funnel. I was given 3 more to play. Only one of them made it out alive, and then she died in the next adventure. So it was a lot of fun to play, but man, you're going to lose characters early on. If you're a player who likes to play a character and never have anything bad happen to them, this is not the game for you.
Yeah.
But if you don't mind playing a lot of interesting characters, this is also a lot of fun for people who are GMs, because as GMs, we're used to playing multiple characters. This is a chance or for a GM or a player to play multiple characters at once. You're going to start the game playing a whole bunch of different personalities and play around with them until you find the one you like and keep that one alive. Maybe don't have them be the first one to open the door every time. All right, Phil, what are some of the things that you would say as strategies for the game?
Yeah, so as referee, right? I will always use the term GM, but technically referee. I would say play some of the published adventures. So you know me, I used to have a lot of bullshit about not playing published adventures.
Yep.
I will say that DCC published adventures are fantastic. Like, you should definitely play some of these adventures. They do a lot to set the tone of the game. I think they will take you to places that will feel unsafe and yet level appropriate. I think they are exceptional. And the cool part is, if you go on the Goodman website, they actually have the modules also broken down by level. So you can be like, I need a level 0 funnel, and it will show you all the funnels. I need a level 1 adventure, and it will show you all the level 1 adventures. Plus, this game's pretty popular. So if you quick search for reviews, you can find reviews on almost every one of these adventures, or people's favorite adventures, things like that. Get the core mechanic down early. That core D20 plus bonus thing, which if you played like 3.5 and stuff, you're going to get down super quick. But once you get that mechanic down as a GM, you can make rulings pretty easily, including the dice chain, right? Get used to moving up and down the dice chain. Get comfortable with making rulings. It's just a way the game is. You're not going to be going into the rule book for a lot of stuff. Players are going to be like, I want to climb up this thing, and you're going to be like, yep, that's a strength check. But it's slippery, like it's got trickling water rolling. Cool. Make a D16 strength check. Difficulty like 14 or whatever. And you actually tune both of those, right? So you have your DC for the level, and then you have the die for so how hard is this, and then what are the circumstances, right? So the dice can be circumstantial, and the DC being the overall difficulty. Once you learn how to tune that dial, you can make a lot of things happen. And then there's a few subsystems you're going to have to get down in order to GM the game effectively, going from level 1 forward. You do not need to get these down for playing it at 0, but you will when you go from when you start first level games. Mighty Deeds is one. Got to get comfortable with how the Mighty Deeds system works. It's not super hard. Player-based magic. I understand it enough to be able to walk players through it. Now, I say player-based magic, and this is the thing I love about DCC. The NPCs and monsters do not need to use the same spell lists. You can use them if you want, but sometimes they just simplify it in the rules and be like, this monster shoots eye beams or casts, they cast this spell, but it does this much damage, this much range or whatever. So you don't always have to be fiddly on the GM side, which I love. It's fun for the players to roll for their spells, but for the GM, it can be cumbersome, so they streamline that. Get used to player-based healing, because once you get to be first level, players are going to be constantly having to heal each other, and the cleric's healing is this interesting little thing where you have a little table where you cross each person's alignment, you roll a d20 check to see how well you do, and then it gives you the number of dice that are rolled, and those dice are the hit die of the person you're healing. It takes a little bit to get that together and to do it quickly. Learn monster turning. Monster turning's a little more in depth in terms of what you can do with it, because you can turn not just undead, depending on your, I think it's depending on the god you worship or your alignment. You can turn a little bit more than just the undead, and you kind of want to make sure you know how turning works. The skill system is super easy, right? You either have the skill in your background, you get a D20, or you get a D10. Cool. Those are my tips.
Yeah, is that I'm wondering if we really hit on that skill thing.
Oh, I can go back.
Earlier.
You want me to unpack that a little?
Yeah, just unpack that a little bit.
Okay, so there are no skill lists in the game, right? So there's no like diplomacy, rope use, any of those things. What you have is that when you were a 0 level character, you have an occupation, right? Gong farmer, cheesemonger, barrister, whatever. When you want to, princess, right? When you want to do something in the game that's skill wise, the GM will be like, does your background make it likely you know how to do this, right? So let's say that Mock, our Jerry's thief, stumbles upon a block of rare cheese, right? And somebody's like, well, how much money could we get for this cheese, right? So if Bob's character, Percival, right? Mm-hmm. If Percival was to be like, how much money do I think this cheese is worth? I would be like, do you have anything in your background that would indicate like that you were a trader, that you were a cook, whatever?
I was a squire. I didn't know crap about cheese.
Right. So I'd be like, cool, make an intelligence check D10.
Oh, I'm screwed.
Right. Right. And so you probably won't know.
Because Percy's got a 6 intelligence.
Right. But then I go to like Mock, and like Mock was a cheesemonger. So in his background, of course, Mock knows like expensive cheeses. So I would say, cool, Mock, you can make that same intelligence check D20.
Which Mock is still screwed up because Mock also has an intelligence of 6.
Yes.
Mock is only pawn in Game of Life.
Yes, exactly. But that's the idea. The idea is that your character's background is the narrative positioning for whether you would actually know how to do a thing or whether you're just kind of winging it.
Yeah.
And it's narrative positioning. It's between the player and the referee to kind of decide that gray area. Like, can your barrister forge papers? Maybe, right? Like, maybe they can, maybe they can't. Right? They certainly can write. Whereas, your gong farmer might, does your gong farmer know the history of this kingdom? Probably not, right? Like, but who knows? Like, maybe they roll high enough on their check or whatever. So, so it's great because what it basically does is every skill check is just an attribute check. And the deciding factor is if you have the narrative positioning to be skilled in it, you get the D20. If not, you get the D10. So
before we get off this, you made the comment about game science having only certain kinds of dice.
Yeah.
If you go into if you go and look at the D16, there's only a blue D16.
Yes.
If you're willing to pay $1 more, it can be pre-inked and they have 9 different colors.
Oh.
So you can actually go through and for $3 a die, you can get the dice. Even if you can only get one color, you can get lots of different inkings so that you can still identify your dice by the colors they are.
You can get the inks are different colors.
Yep. So you could do a blue D14 with pink numbers, and a blue D16 with black numbers, and a blue D3 with ultramarine numbers.
So you could do that where you take all your normal polyhedrals and have them one color, and all the funky ones be a different color to help you identify.
Oh, that's interesting.
That is an interesting idea.
You can buy the missing dice for about $17.
Interesting.
Not that I sat there while you were talking and getting a set of dice.
Put a cart together?
Sure. Yes.
Cool. Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry.
Oh, it's really nice to be able to do that. Because if I'd known that, I would have done that earlier.
Yeah, I might actually buy myself some game science ones then.
Oh, I love game science dice. All right, cool. Final thoughts. So I'll to bring our in-depth to conclusion. As fantasy games go, I actually like this game quite a bit. I would rank it second to Forbidden Lands. Forbidden Lands probably being my favorite fantasy game right now. But this game is a solid contender. It is without a doubt my beer and pretzels RPG. Now that is my choice. That's not really a thing about the game, right? The game does not say it's a beer and pretzel game. It just happens to be our beer and pretzel RPG in that we play a little meta. We don't always take it super serious. And we're basically just running module to module. Like we don't have a campaign. We just finish a module and I go get another module and we run the characters through the next module and level up kind of thing. But the rules are flexible enough that after you have gotten through the initial learning curve, running the game is pretty straightforward. I felt like I had my sea legs to this game pretty early on, and then picked up the nuances along the way. And then lastly, my last concluding thought, the module support for this game is fantastic. You do not have to prep your own stuff. Like you do not have to make your own dungeons if you don't want to, and you will not be disappointed if you pick the ones that they have. Like they are, I think they're great. Like they actually have, Goodman Games has a PDF on how to write great adventures, and I haven't picked it up yet, but I'm inclined to get it because I have overall found their designs for this game to be quite compelling. So I will probably check it out. I believe it's called How to Write Adventures That Don't Suck, which I appreciate greatly. And I think it was born out of a Gen Con panel that they basically then got writers to write it, and then they updated it a couple of years later. Anyway, it's on the Goodman Games website, so it's definitely worth checking out. So anyway, I think those are my concluding thoughts. Jer?
First of all, this is by far my favorite update for BX. I grew up with playing this. I played original D&D and the Blue Box basic set. I really got into D&D in a heavy way as both a player and a GM with the Otis cover basic set. And this plays like it, feels like it. You can easily take all those old modules that were fun in the old days and play them using this game system and without almost any conversion. It reminds me of playing D&D as a little 8-9-year-old kid. I would also say that this is a game to play with friends. Don't take it seriously. Have a good time, and it encourages that kind of fun, happiness, and kind of goofy zanity. It's a really great game to play when you're just trying to hang with your friends, have a good time, and do some adventuring. If you're going to play it, understand that it's both an homage and a parody of old school gaming. It hangs a lampshade on a lot of the things that were not good about old school gaming, and has a good time with it. If you're a GM or a player who really likes the idea of eldritch Lovecraftian horror, there are modules out there that will capture that feeling, as well as many of the Call of Cthulhu adventures that are out there. It really does a good job of both strange otherworldliness and, oh my God, this thing is so weird, we may not be able to beat it, but we might be able to beat it. And lastly, I really think that this is the niche for me that Lamentations of the Flame Princess originally fit with me, where I was like, oh, I want weird fantasy with, weird monsters, but that D&D rules. The difference is this doesn't have the horrible authors, the spooky misogyny that Lamentations had, or the shock value violence. It's creepy and gooey, and there is lots of violence and strangeness, but almost none of it is shock value. It's more strange and weird. And if you originally liked the Lamentations adventures, but were put off by the horribleness now, this is a great way to fill that in. And also, none of the modules are designed to just punish and kill the players off. As tough as the funnels are, as overpowering as some of the bad guys are, you can always run away, and playing the characters like you would play adventurers won't punish you. There's a lot of old school feel from the old days with things like Grimtooth's Traps, and things today with some of the new adventures that are being written for the OSR community, where they want to punish players for playing the obvious thing. These don't do that. You might get messed up a little bit, by doing things in a goofy way or doing things in a, your eyes might suddenly slide off your face if you're not careful, but you'll get them back eventually if you play the game all the way through. It does a lot of things right and plays very well with them. So if you like the old games but want to kind of play them in a modern feel, this is what I would play. There's a lot of things in this that I would love to import into other games. So, Bob?
Yeah, so hopefully I am coming through okay. My mic apparently got super hot.
Whoa, you started off hot.
Yep.
Speak softly, my friend.
I'm going to try not to.
There you go.
I got the thing cranked way down, so I don't know what else I can do besides talk super soft. But so the game plays well, and it really scratches the old school itch for me with a lot of weird. Sorry. And now everybody says I'm super quiet. Well, whatever. What's going to happen is I'm going to turn it up a little bit. But anyhow, so it plays well. It scratches that itch. Even though the system lends itself towards suboptimal ability scores and general lack of choice for character paths, I find myself rooting for some of those less fortunate characters.
I love the I do too.
Yeah. It's just like, oh, this person, like, just, I don't know what it is about this character, but, like, I hope they live.
Yeah.
And really I find it to be really great for those nights when you really, really just want to kill some things and take their shit.
Yeah.
Right? That's not the only way to get through stuff, but when that's the feeling that you've got, this plays into that fairly well. But then you can also just kind of lean away from that and do the heavy exploration. It's a very flexible dungeon crawly type of thing. So,
to the game's credit, for all the modules we have played, none of the things that we have killed and taken its shit were ever living peacefully in a dungeon and got raided by by the adventurers. There's always something really awful happening when the adventurers come upon it, and then it's like, welp, this is gonna happen.
Yeah,
like
it's not like we came upon a village of some
kobolds or
whatever,
right, like,
and we just went into their village without heed and just went, we're just gonna slaughter you and take all your shit.
Yeah, there's. Yeah, it's very much not that. It is very much like this thing is this thing is killing innocent people to feed them to it, to its dark evil god of many eyes. Like, okay, guess it's on.
All
like,
right, well, every bit of loot I find in here, I'm gonna take with glee.
Yes, yeah, I think that's a thing it does actually. It does pretty well. Yeah. All right, cool. So that's our deep dive. We have explored the depths of DCC. We hope we've piqued your curiosity. I know it's not a game. I mean, when you look at, listen, this show is about the games that we are currently playing in our lives. So if you've tracked the show over the years, we're like all over the place because we like playing lots of games. We're polygamorous. I hope that this deep dive piques some people's curiosities to give this game a try. I think this game is one of the best D20 implementations for fantasy, and I think it is a hoot to play. Like, I think the adventures are just downright enjoyable, and I think that people should not be afraid of the giant book.
Yep.
And should try it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry.
All right. You want to anything in the chat room?
Yeah, we got one more thing. Andy wanted to know what beer and pretzels really means.
Sure. So beer and pretzels is it's just kind of a way of saying that this is a less serious game, right? Like the idea that you're kicked back with a beverage and, grabbing your snacks off the middle of the table. When I say beer and pretzels game, I mean a game where we're playing the game, but we are taking it lightheartedly, which often means that we are shifting in and out of character. Like sometimes we're just playing character, sometimes we're just telling jokes at the table. We don't often have like serious, deep moments with our characters, as opposed to, and I guess in contrast to like a more serious game that I would play, where I would expect like everybody to be in their character, playing their character most of the time. Our meta conversations would really be about like structuring plot and storyline and where are we going with this. The drama and intensity would be much higher in a game. This is, when we play this game and like, like the time where Sir Percival, he's the one who lost his eyes, right?
Yep.
Right? Like when he got cursed and his eyes slid off his head and onto the wall, like we all busted out laughing, right? Like we were like, oh no, right? And like just having a good time with it, right? Like it's a lighter, casual style of game, I guess is the way to say it. It's our beer and pretzel game. I don't actually drink beer that much. I do like pretzels.
Yeah.
Soft pretzels. More than hard pretzels.
Yeah.
Like my pants. Soft pants more than hard pants.
Pants are overrated.
Pants are overrated. That's what I learned this pandemic. 1, I learned that I upped my stir fry game, and 2, hard pants are for suckers.
There you go.
All right, let's mosey on out of here.
All right. I should transition us into the next thing. What do you think?
That's what I was trying to tell you.
And there we are. All right.
Ooh, conversation corner. So first of all, I have to say it was nice not to just do another salon. Like I've been enjoying not having to write shows, but I also at the same time was like with Jerry, where I was like, I think we've done too many of these. We need to stop. So
you need to break it up every once in a while.
We just needed to break it up. Yes. So I'm happy to have done something, a little change in pace there. So that was good. Oh, I mean, it's hard, right? Podcasting during the pandemic is hard. And I honestly, there was a part of me early on in March that was like optimistic, where it was like, well, we'll only have to do these, we'll only have to do these Zoom episodes for a little while. And then, and then we'll be back together around, Jair's table or whatever and doing stuff. But by the looks of it, like, it's not going to end for a little while. Like, which means that, we're going to wind up having a co-host meeting, because we kind of have to up our game a little. Like we're going to have to do this a bit longer than I thought we were going to. So
we got some ideas on that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I do too, actually. So, that's fine. That's fine. I just, there was this hopeful optimism in March that now, as I look at the nationwide numbers, I'm like, well, like, guess we're hunkering down for a while. All right. Anyway, conversation corner. We're just talking about the other stuff going on in our lives. Anybody want to start?
Sure, Bob.
Yeah. So, sorry. I need a sip. There we go. That's better. So I've been working on upping my food game a little bit. When I was going into the office to work, I ate out for lunch almost every day.
Amen.
That kind of thing. So I've been buying a lot of stuff and prepping meals and super simple stuff. But one of the things that I hadn't done before was something other than chicken. Like, I had a lot of chicken breasts, chicken thighs, And the one day when I was in the store, I saw the pork tenderloins at Wegmans, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna grab one of these. And I was like, all right, what am I gonna do with this? And I had a conversation with some people online, some suggestions and whatnot. And ultimately, what I ended up doing was just super simple. Found a recipe from Reynolds Foil, Reynolds Wrap, and it was just, you take the thing, because the tenderloin that I bought was already marinated in stuff. It's a rosemary balsamic marinade, so there's not really much else I'm gonna do to that. It's already been seasoned and whatnot, so it's just like flop it on a pan and cook it. But I found a thing for baby red potatoes and pork tenderloin, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this. So Wegmans actually has a bag of right around a pound of baby red potatoes that's designed to microwave them in the bag, or you can take them out. You can just prep them normally. So I took them out, I cut them into quarters, I threw them in a bowl with some. I didn't have olive oil, but I had canola oil in the house. So I threw a little canola oil, some basil, some crap. Now I can't think of the other one that I put on it.
Thyme?
No.
Oregano?
Not oregano.
Shit.
Sage? Parsley?
Parsley. Thank you. Parsley and basil were the two that were in this recipe. And I added some garlic powder and some paprika and some salt and pepper. You just tossed them in that. And then just put the tenderloin in the middle of the pan, put the potatoes around it, threw it in the oven, cooked it for a half an hour, like 35 minutes. And that was it.
Yeah, there you go.
And it was tender, it was juicy, the potatoes were awesome. The size of the tenderloin was 1.23 pounds. So between that and the pound of potatoes, it was like when you do the math based on portion sizes and whatnot, it was like 4.9 servings of pork and like 4.5 servings of potatoes. So I just rounded that off to 4 of each. And I cut the tenderloin so that I could divide it up 4 ways and did the same thing with the potatoes. And it came out to like under 400 calories for the potatoes and the meat for 1 serving. And I threw in a thing of steamed fresh vegetables for another like 75 calories. And that was my dinner. And I have 3 more servings of meat and potatoes that I can do some more vegetables with. And it was good. And it was easy. And it was fast. There was nothing to it. And I'm like, well, shit, that's I'll be doing that again. I'm going to look for some regular pork tenderloins that aren't already pre-seasoned, because I had a suggestion from Evil John to take a packet of taco seasoning and just rub it down with taco seasoning. And I'm like, that sounds interesting.
Based on that, this week while I was at Wegmans, they had a sale on some meats. So I picked up a chuck roast, but I also picked up an 8-pack of boneless pork tenderloins. They were on sale this week at Wegmans, one by us. So I haven't done anything with them yet, but I found a recipe for doing them in the air fryer. It's like 14 minutes in the air fryer. Just rub them with pepper and salt and some spices and go from there. So you might want to, that it sounds, you got me started on that. So if you go back to Wegmans, they may still have the pork loins on sale. It's an 8-pack.
Oh yeah. We get those. I get those plain pork loins all the time. Actually, the thing I love is that we often will cook one during the week, but I will then take some of that pork loin and slice it up and use it for a stir fry or pork fried rice later in the week. So I will, co-opt, like, depending on the flavor. Like, I don't know if I would do it with the rosemary one that Bob had, but like a plain one that I've seasoned myself. Yeah, I absolutely will grab that bad boy and chop it up, make it into a nice stir fry. That's a favorite of mine. Yes, I hear the chat room is feverishly coming up with suggestions for your stuff for your kitchen. Olive oil for starters. I'm looking on my shelves down here in the basement. I see 3 bottles of olive oil. Like, apparently I hoarded olive oil during the apocalypse, like, just in case.
Hey, apparently, according to the interwebs, canola oil is not a terrible thing to use.
Canola oil is not terrible. Olive oil has a very distinct flavor, and if you were already doing like rosemary and stuff like that, olive oil would have gone. Olive oil would have taken you on that same journey, like would have gone down that flavor path with you.
Yeah.
I use canola oil when I use canola oil when I stir fry. I use olive oil for a lot of things. I'm half Italian. I use olive oil for everything.
My wife has made we've got a glass bottle full of vegetable oil, a glass bottle full of olive oil, and a glass bottle that she's mixed the olive oil and the canola oil together, and then added some spices. So we have a basting oil as well.
Interesting.
And that's what we used. So this week I made I bought the red potatoes Bob's talking about. I don't see what he's talking about because I bought 2 bags of those because I made me and my vegetable feelings, but I like the flavor of vegetables, not the texture. So I made a 2-pound pot roast, seared the salt and coarse salt and pepper, seared 6 sides, made up a beef broth out of beef base. My wife tossed a bunch of good spices in it because she knows more about it than I do. and then we just put a bag of potatoes in the bottom. I bought some mirepoix, so I had my carrots, onions, and celery. I just dump them in there without having to actually chop them up, and cooked that bad boy in the slow cooker.
Yeah.
Same thing. Those potatoes
Jerry, I love that your wife is the spice ninja.
Oh my
like,
God, she's
you'll
amazing.
be cooking and she'll like slide. She like slides into the kitchen, like bam, 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 just hits it with like a bunch of spice and then rolls out. Like
I picture Lily with the Spice Weasel from Futurama. She's like, bam.
The best part is she comes in while I'm cooking. We also have different flavor palettes, so we don't always cook the same. Sometimes we'll make something for me, something for her. So I'm getting this all ready, and I've got a recipe that I got, and I'm serious. And she comes in, and I didn't have any beef broth, so we we're just going to make some from scratch. But she has actual beef base that she used to make the broth with, and add some. And as she's doing this, she's adding more spices. She's like, "That looks good." She's like, "Oh," she's like, "I'm sorry." She's like, "You were doing this. I didn't mean to take this." I'm like, "No." I said, "Anytime I'm cooking, anytime I'm cooking, you can come in." I said, "You know how to do this better than I do." I said, I'm not quite bachelor pad level cook, but I'm not that level where she can just come in and add a little spice. She's like, "I know what you want. I know how it's good." And oh my God, it was so good. And when we were done, I made 2 bagel sandwiches with pot roast on them. And then after that, we had enough that I filled a 1-quart Tupperware with just pulled beef and potatoes and pulverized onions, carrots, and celery, which is delicious. Now we've got mostly beef because somebody in the house who will be nameless was very fond of the potatoes afterwards.
Yeah. You did the one thing that I did not do that I will do the next time.
What's that?
That is sear the tenderloin before I put it in the oven to broil or to baste or bake it. I had seen that in a bunch of other recipes, and I just didn't even think of it when I was going to do this actual recipe just to make sure I had everything right. I'm looking at the recipe, and it's like, okay, just throw it in there. And I'm like, it came out, and it looked cooked, but it didn't look like,
It's sear, man.
Yeah, so, yes, I know how to sear, Andy.
If you really want to get into like searing and cooking, I highly recommend a cast iron pan, because that is the kind of thing that you can throw on your stove. You can put the meat right in there, sear it, pick it up, and toss it into the oven, and finish cooking it right in the same pan.
Yeah, we have a set of stainless steel pans. There are 2. No, we can't use those. No, but we have a set of stainless steel pans, and we have a couple of quote unquote non-stick frying pans that I don't know what the coating is, but they're pretty robust. They're not like the shitty non-stick stuff that you used to get, but they're not like that stuff you see on TV that they fucking scrape it with a rock and nothing happens.
Sure. Yeah. Yes. Run a chainsaw over it. It's fine. Yeah.
I'll tell you that the thing is, we have a cast iron pan. I've got a couple of them because we bought a couple of them at the restaurant Supply Depot. But we have a Ninja slow cooker, and the Ninja slow cooker is designed that you can set it for sear first. So we seared the meat in the slow cooker first.
Oh, that's nice.
And then because the Ninja has several settings on it, you can use it as a slow cooker or as a baker, or you can almost use it like an Instapot, not quite. But yeah, you can set up the sear. That's what we did. We seared the meat in the slow cooker, took the meat out, put the broth in, gave it a quick little stir to get all the cracklings off the bottom, and mixed back into the broth.
Deglaze that thing.
And then, thank you, that's the term. Thank you. I knew you'd have it. And then put the layer of potatoes down, put the mirepoix down, put the meat in, put the broth on it. Oh, that's it. And then we added some a couple teaspoons of minced garlic on top of that, just because I'm also Italian. So
only a couple teaspoons.
Only a couple, yes. That was
if the recipe calls for a clove of garlic, you put 4 in.
You put at least 2.
It called for a clove. I put 2 teaspoons, which is the equivalent of 4 cloves. That's about right.
Okay, good.
I'm with you.
So guess what I'm having for lunch almost every day this week now. So
yes, pot roast.
Not a bad thing. I like leftovers. So this has been Misdirected Mark Kitchens.
Yes.
All right. I'll go real quick through my conversation corner just because I know we got to move along. This week we played the second week of Mothership, which is the kind of survival horror game. Very rules light. The game plays very heavily on its own tone and mechanics. It's a lot of fun, and it's a game that you could definitely play for several adventures. I like the way the ship is designed. It's got a lot of mechanics in it that I'll just tell you. If you're a fan of old school games where you used to spend hours and hours and hours designing starships, this is like that, but it takes like 5 minutes.
Yeah, you said that before. You said that there was some really fun.
There's 2 different mechanics you use. One is you just roll the dice, and whatever they come up with, that's the other thing is there's a sheet you fill out that just says, okay, you just tell the game what you want for your ship. Based on what you come up with in column 1, it tells you how much you need for column 2, 3, 4. And when you're done, you just come up with a bunch of stats for your ship. So you don't sit down and figure out, okay, I want to have a crew of 10. Okay, great. Then my crew rating is 1. If I have 10 crew, I need 2 sets of cabins. And just add that up. You can make ships real quickly and then just draw boxes on a map or roll dice on a map. It's a lot of fun. And we've had fun exploring the ship and getting terrified along the way.
Yeah.
Well, most of us have been getting terrified. I'm the android, so I keep having lapses of memory where I can't remember doing things.
Someone keeps initiating your command code.
Yes. Well, don't worry. I do have a strong loyalty to the crew, and you guys are still the crew. The other people on the ship, we're not sure about them yet. So, all right. And Phil, what have you been up to this week?
Well, I mean, most of my week was, working. It was brutal. Like last week was brutal. I worked so much. We ran into problems. We worked through the problems. We didn't get it finished. So we took Sunday off and we started replanning on Monday, and we just went back to work today. And I've got probably another at least 3 more days of kind of intense days ahead of me if everything goes okay. Fingers crossed. I did keep reading Amber, The Chronicles of Amber. I finished Guns of Avalon last night. Boy, that book is just enjoyable. Like just to sit and
it's a lot of fun.
To read again. Like I forgot how much I enjoyed that series of books. So sitting, finishing that up. For whatever reason last night, I was down here recording Pandas and I was like about to head upstairs, and I like just kind of glanced over at my downstairs game shelf. And I was like, I just like pulled one book off the shelf and took it upstairs with me. And it was Whispering Vault. And I was just like, man, like this game is probably still pretty playable. Like, I know it's a 90s game, but like
I have great nostalgia for that game.
I do too. And I'm kind of wondering if we should just dust it off and fire it up and play it. Like, it's a great one-shot game, or one adventure game, because it'll never be in one session. But I kind of pondering just going back and reading it and just like seeing what I feel about the game. Like I was a huge game for Phil and Bob history. It's actually the second game we ever played. We first were going to play Kessel Falkenstein.
Yep.
And I think we made characters and played like 1 or 2 sessions. And then we wound up playing Whispering Vault. And shortly after Whispering Vault, you introduced me to Brother Jim. And then I was like, oh, we should play Amber. And that was like that was it. Like that was the beginning of like our 30 some odd year gaming adventures together. Yeah. So Whispering Vault is very fond to me in that respect. We all had a lot of fun playing that game, and I kind of just want to go back and see. Like, I don't think that game is that dated. I know it's got a lot of it's not a very big game. It's got a lot of setting.
Yeah.
Like the ritual and the circumstance of like how you get to the earth and stuff like that. Anyway, so I'm like flipping through it. Like I'm flipping through it. I really didn't do anything, right? So like last week I like basically like watched TikTok, read books. I didn't even have time to play Minecraft. I was so busy, I didn't log out of my work machine for like 4 days. Like I didn't even like switch, and I got into a weird place where I didn't want to people. Like I wasn't coming on Mumble or anything. Like my super introvert took over, which was like, I went from just being naturally introverted to like, I don't really need to interact with the outside world. like, and shrunk everything down. And I think by Sunday, I was like, Saturday or Sunday, I was like, no, Sunday, because it wasn't Saturday. Like Sunday, I was like, I need to reverse this trend. Like, I need to get online and like hang out with you guys again. And I did, and it was good. Like, it was very healthy. And and it was Saturday, it wasn't Sunday. I got on, and you were all on there, and it was really good to just like be among family again. And then like I kind of reversed that isolating trend.
Yeah,
that's good.
Last thing I'm going to mention before we get out of here, about a month ago, I know this because my therapy session's tomorrow. So a month ago, I was having a lot of problems sleeping. I was very anxious. And so I didn't realize it's already been 4 weeks, but I definitely have noticed the difference in the steps I took to de-escalate myself every night. So no social media after 11. My phone locks itself out of social media at 12. And no screens an hour before bed. That has had a profound effect on my sleep. Like, I have for the last 4 weeks gotten far more sleep. My mental health is a lot better without doing anything drastic, like quitting Twitter or anything, but just like realizing that towards the end of the night, my energy is not best spent on Twitter. Nor is it spent at 3 a.m. flipping through TikTok, which now my phone won't let me do anyway.
Yeah.
And so it helped really well. I'm actually like, I'm going to go to my therapy session being like, I'm doing much better. Like, I'm much better than I was a month ago. I was kind of a wreck, and now I feel a lot better. I now need to do the thing that Jerry has been doing, which is I need to now get up and move around more. Like, I realized, like, I wasn't exercising a lot before pandemic, but I did get like a 10 to 15 minute walk twice a day based on where I parked at work. And I would have to walk around the office and go up and down stairs to go to the bathroom, lunch, and all that stuff. I don't have to do any of that anymore. My circle is small, and I need to get up and move around more. Like, I've been having some cramps, like leg cramps, and I had like a little bit of swelling the other day, like a little bit, like so like I just like I need to get up and move. I need to start making like I need to find a spot in my day where I just get up and like take a lap around the block, and then like come back in the house.
I'll tell you what did it for me was the posts from Origins from last year, and I looked at the picture. I'm like, man, I'm fat. and I'm like, you know what? I wasn't that fat 3 years ago. I got to start eating better and eating healthier. And so I just went out and bought a bunch of food to make, instead of eating out for lunch every day at work and ordering food in, I said I'm going to make myself some lunches. And I said I used to walk a mile every day. I would get home from work and I would walk. There's a park 6 houses down from me at the end of my street, and it's exactly a mile around the park. They've actually zigzag, so I just decided to start doing that. And I got to get myself back in shape, but that's the start. You know, if I can do 8,000 steps a day and keep myself under 2,000 calories, I'll slowly but surely start working this off. And it takes.
I've been fortunate that since lockdown, like we eat out occasionally, but it's not very often. And so I tend to eat actually really well. And I've probably lost some weight from just not eating out at lunchtime, which was a huge thing. But boy, am I not moving very much. Like, I mean, because my house isn't that big. So getting from like the desk to the kitchen to the bathroom is like 20 feet. Like, it's just a small circle. Yeah. I really got to just, and when everything started, it was March, and that March was miserable. It was rainy and cold, and like, I wasn't going out, but like now, like I really need to just go out. Like, I need to start small. I don't even need to traverse the neighborhood. I can walk up the street to the post office box and back down as just a marker kind of thing. Like, I just need to do something. Like, that's been my problem.
We need to roll into the after show.
We do indeed.
2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah. Holy, that was wow, not as tight as I thought it was going to be. Anyway, give us some patron shout outs, Bob, and let's get the hell out of here.
All right. We've got Alice Kira, Dan Simons, David Walker, Donna McCarthy, Drew Smith, secret weapon of the show, Glenn Seiler,
hey, Glenn.
one of our regular players at almost every table. Jason Pinella, Jason Pitt, Jean Lorbert, and Jeff Stevens. Thank you all for being our patrons, and thanks to everyone else for listening tonight.
If you're free Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's Time, come join us live on Twitch, where you can chat with other listeners in the awesome chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
If you cannot make it to the live show, check out our podcast each week, wherever you get your podcasts. And take a listen to some of our other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Bone Stone and Obsidian, the FM Gamers, Hannah's Talking Games, the Gnome Cast, John Who Hustle, She's a Super Geek, and Bonus Experience. You can, and should, also check out our sibling podcasts, Tabletop Bellhop, The Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and BS.
After you have declared your mighty deed and before you make that attack roll, leave us some feedback. You can reach us directly via the old-fashioned emails, mmp@misdirectedmark.com. Check us out on Twitter. The show and the network is at misdirectedmark. He's at Robert M. Everson. He's at GM Gerrymander. And my name is DNA Phil.
If you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaigns. MMP Down with D&D and Panda Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. She's a Super Geek is at patreon.com/SassGeek. Zhang Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhang Hustle. And Bonus Experience is at patreon.com/Bonus Experience. Patrons of MMP Down with D&D and Panda's Talking Games get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Panda's Talking Games bonus outtakes, and other special releases.
This has been a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. Mic drop.
We out.